I also love Marcus Borg. He says, believe whatever you want about whether these stories happen this way. Now let's talk about what they mean. You can have a really good argument about whether a dude could be swallowed by a fish and live to tell the tale. Right? And I wonder if fish tell that story because they love it. Like, we got one of them, right? I mean, we could argue all day about literal, non-literal. If we never ask, what is the meaning? What is it trying to tell us? Where is it calling us? What is it telling us to let go of? What is it telling us to embrace? What is it? And often these stories are embedded with critique. These stories are saying the way you're going is destructive and it's going to end poorly. And so when all we can do is read these, we tend to read them as adults the way we tell them to our children. And the reality is these stories are much more complex than that. And they're much more challenging than that. And they deserve more of us than a sort of a mindless, repetitive reading. These stories demand and invite us to engage them and to be shaped by them and to be challenged by them. And that's the direction we have to head. So I would say this. I don't want to talk about literal or non-literal. I want to talk about more than literal. And here's what I mean. You can argue whether it literally happened or didn't literally happen. The not more than literal meaning is this. Look, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. What does it mean? And so my approach to these stories in these next several weeks is really, what do they mean and what are they saying to us? And so I want to ask for 3 commitments from us together. If you're watching on Facebook, you're definitely including this too. Here are the commitments I want to ask for. I want you to commit to read the Bible. Right? It's everybody's favorite book. You ought to read it. Right? I mean, everybody talks about, I love the Bible. But very few people, I mean, if you look at statistics, more and more people aren't reading it. And yet we're all experts. That seems like a weird sort of balance. I want to ask you to read the Bible. Next week, we're going to be looking at Genesis 2 and 3. So if you read Genesis 2 and 3 this week, you'll come in with a bit of background on what we're going to talk about. So I want you to read the stories every week before you come in. Maybe read them a couple times if you have time. Maybe make notes about things you find interesting or questions you have. Like, read the Bible and just see what's going on there and make a note of it. I want to invite you to read the Bible generously. And here's what I mean. Some of you are going to read and you're going to get one thing. Some of you are going to read and get another. And then some of you are going to read and you're going to wonder about aliens. I know. That's what's going to happen. Be generous with each other. If you find yourself in a group discussing this and somebody has a different interpretation than you do, yep, Clark's back there, so that's our alien guy. He'll be wondering about that. If somebody has a different interpretation, that's okay. You're all being graded on a curve. It's going to be fine. The importance is engaging them and engaging them generously. What often happens is people read the Bible, they have their interpretations, and then they start throwing them at people instead of actually dialoguing. So read it generously and read the Bible with an openness to surprise. I know. How many of you have read the story of Jonah before? Spoiler alert, dude gets swallowed by a fish. Right? How many of you have read the story of the Garden of Eden before? Spoiler alert, they get kicked out. Right? How many of you read the story of Elisha healing Naaman the leper? Not as many. Spoiler alert, he gets healed. And what tends to happen is we think we know these stories. Dallas Willard said that familiarity breeds unfamiliarity. You can be so close to something, and maybe you've experienced this about people too. You get to know somebody, you're around them so much that when somebody else meets them, they're like, hey, this person's great. You're like, I'm around them all the time. But the reality is, sometimes we need to come with new eyes, new lenses, new glasses. So what if we read the Bible assuming that we didn't have it figured out? And I'm going into these stories each week, I'm assuming that I don't know what they mean. And I want to be open to that meaning coming to the surface as I wrestle with it. And so that's all. What if we read these stories openly? Hearts open, eyes open, minds open. And then we got together. I mean, Wednesday nights are a great time to get together and share these things. We have that discussion group on Wednesday night. It's a great time to bring the things you find interesting and you've drawn out and bring those in community and talk about them. But let's do that with generosity and openness. Are you with me? We're going to move into a time of communion. The band's going to come back up. I just want to say, at the beginning we talked a bit about people being wounded. If you're here today and you're carrying around wounds that were biblically inflicted, people using the Bible in weaponized form, I've been on both sides of that, so I know how painful that is. And what if we took some time this morning to begin that healing process? What if we took time to say, look, I'm not jumping in with both feet, but I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open to approaching the Bible. I'm going to be open to hearing a fresh reading of the Bible. I'm going to be open to be challenged by it. So maybe you're in that camp. Maybe you're here today and you're so familiar, you're unfamiliar. And this process today of celebrating communion, of taking bread, dipping in the cup, something we do every week together, this process for you today is about opening your heart. Opening your heart up to learn new things. Opening your heart up to be challenged. Opening our hearts up to think maybe we don't have it all figured out. So whatever this time needs to be for us, wherever you've been with the Bible, whatever's happened to you with the Bible, whether you think you know nothing or you think you know everything, what if this is a moment where we open ourselves to healing, or we open ourselves to transformation? We have candles. If you need to light a candle today, it's a symbol to yourself of your openness, or as a way of remembering and wrestling with something. Those candles are over there. We're going to read our prayer together in just a moment, and then you're going to be invited to celebrate the Eucharist, celebrate communion, where we're reminded of what love looks like. Broken open and poured out for others. So let's stand together and we're going to pray, and then we'll celebrate communion. Everybody's welcome at the table.